Live from Parks, this is Paul Murray Live, Our Town.
G'day Australia and welcome to the Railway Hotel here in Parks. This is a place that is known for oh so much, including the world of Elvis, where each and every year there's a special celebration of the King, and the King is in town tonight. I don't mean me, I mean literally the King. A chat with him a little bit later. As always, we like to tell you about the region, why to come, but most importantly, the message each and every month is Visit Australia. Come and have a look at this beautiful country. Take as many photos as if you can, and as you do, pull into as many towns as possible because the people are ace, the locations are magnificent, the food's spectacular, and you know, when it comes to food, I'm absolutely accredited to have an opinion. All right, speaking of, let's get into the day's news and plenty of it that's around. Now, you will be pleased to know that we have a Prime Minister who feels our pain. Now, he doesn't do that with any of his actions, but of course he says it in speeches. He did so on Friday where he said, "I feel your cost of living pain." And why wouldn't Anthony Albanese be the man who absolutely feels our pain? I mean, he's the guy who, of course, decided to increase petrol taxes to 49 cents per litre, refuses to cut it because that, of course, would help people. He's the guy who took $1,500 out of the automatic tax return for 10 million voters in Australia. He's the man who feels the cost of living pain because he, along with every other person in our federal government, got the largest pay rise in 10 years on his watch. Plus, of course, he's a man who certainly feels our pain because this was a cost of living budget. And everyone knows this was a cost of living budget because I don't know about you, totally solved for me. Like 100% easy. Like I was talking to the people here in Parks, they've never had it better, swimming in cash just because of the greatest Prime Minister of all time. But of course, he feels our pain and he feels for the little people because remember, this budget that produced an average tax cut of about, what, $36 per worker per week is getting not one but two private planes. That's the guy who understands cost of living. When he's going to spend basically the same amount of money he piddled up against the wall on a yes-no question that only Albo could turn from 60-40 yes into 60-40 hell no. He said, well, that was last year. This year it should be $450 million and not one but two private planes. Now, again, just to show that he cares, he is part of the greatest Prime Minister of all time speaking. Sorry, I'm a bit emotional. On Friday.
I know that when you are living week to week, it's hard to even find the time to think about the future, let alone plan for it with confidence.
I mean, he understands, right? He's got a private plane already, which he flies around and names after his dog. He understands what it's like because he got the pay rise along with everyone else. He understands what it's like because he's allowed to sell his investment properties because he just, needs an extra $1.9 million. Geez, it must be one hell of a wedding. But on top of that, of course, he understands our pain because I don't know if you know this about the Prime Minister. Did you know that he grew up in a single-parent household and a housing... unbelievable, right? He understands your pain. Now, of course, what is central to one of my many frustrations with this Prime Minister and why I constantly keep coming back to the cost of living is because he does know better, but he shows himself to be a person as if he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, not a wooden spoon across his backside. He's a bloke who, of course, when he was in opposition, every single thing to do with cost of living was personal. It was the then Prime Minister and his government's fault.
What we know is that under Scott Morrison, cost of living is in crisis. We know that the price of everything is going up, but people's wages aren't. Scott Morrison, of course, is happy to always take credit for anything that goes right. But he always says it's not my job, it's someone else's fault, it's nothing to do with me when things aren't going so well.
So you see, cost of living is completely the Prime Minister's responsibility. Unless, of course, it's this Prime Minister. The Prime Minister blames the rising costs on 2 years of economic shocks and aftershocks which were caused by the pandemic, conflicts overseas and the most significant international energy crisis in half a century. Yeah, because idiots like you think we should blow up the power system that worked to replace it with the one that'll cost $1 trillion to make and, fingers crossed, will work just as well as the previous one has. Now, of course, my frustration comes from the fact that this guy's promise couldn't have been clearer. How many times have I shown you this poster? Because I want every person who sees the show to remember what the promise was and test that against the reality of the past 2 years. Cost of living has got worse. It is not all the government's fault, but it wasn't all the government's fault last time. But I hold this bloke's feet to the fire because he set the standard by which he judged others, and therefore he should be judged. And on that case, he fails very often. But of course, this Prime Minister takes no responsibility for anything. So it won't surprise you that he had a conversation on a podcast, university podcast, where it's all Sky News' fault. It's all Sky News, 2GB, 3AW, it's all Paul Murray, and it's all Ray Hadley's fault. You see, the Prime Minister expressed his frustration with unspecified newspapers, geez, I wonder what he's talking about, radio stations and TV commentators. Hi, Albo, glad you're watching. In an interview with the Australian National University podcast. I mean, the Prime Minister's got time to do student radio, but basically now it's a podcast, complaining particularly about the cost of the government's revamped tax cuts. Oh, yes, it is completely my fault. It is completely Sky News Primetime's fault. It is completely Ray Hadley's fault that when you told your Labor MPs that the tax cuts were a, and I quote, solution to cost of living, that while the rest of the media, that of course play games for access, don't want to upset the dear leader at all, well, those of us who couldn't give a tuppence whether he calls us or not, or ignores us, or even tries to threaten ever so passively aggressively our existence at times, that the reality of the tax cut was too little too late. Remember, even when they launched this thing, it was all about thousands of dollars at the end of the year, but the reality was you pay your tax per week. You pay your tax per fortnight, you pay your tax per month, which is why I've said since day one, too little too late. When your energy bill goes up by the amount that it has, when the petrol bill goes up, let alone everything else. Notice they never talk about insurance. Well, of course, that has also gone up by the best part of what? More than 20%. But too little, too late tax cuts. Well, if you earn just $45,000, it's $15 a week. $60,000, $22 a week. You've seen it how many times before? That's why I call it too little too late, because even if you were somebody on the bones of their backside, you're not noticing $15. And it's just so patronising from the people who fly around in the private planes with millions of dollars worth of investment properties. And good luck to him, that's fine, don't have a problem with personal investment, but still. The people who get the biggest pay rise in 10 years, as well as the bureaucrats who get the biggest pay rise in 10 years, who turn around and they just think so generically poorly of you. That $36, a couple of crumbs, that'll be okay. P.S. not one, but 2 near private planes for me. Anyway, the thin-skinned Prime Minister continues here. He thinks that people like myself, Ray Hadley, people on 2GB, 3AW, 4BC and the rest of us here in Sky News Primetime are a cheer squad for Peter Dutton. This is because some of the transcripts that he reads when Peter Dutton does interviews with us essentially is him just saying, yes, I agree, because maybe he does agree with the premise of the question that he's just been asked. Not everything is to be put through the ringer of the ABC where they try to kind of fit you up as being a mini Trump. Well, thankfully, of course, we have no evidence whatsoever of the Prime Minister or Labor Party leader agreeing with people when he's getting interviewed.
The economic and budgetary circumstances have completely changed since the Stage 3 tax cuts were first announced.
Well, the economic circumstances have changed, Laura.
Is there actually scope for the government to prosecute an ambitious agenda in the face of it?
There is.
Albo's not very pleased because Labor remains strongly opposed to the plan, don't you, Albo?
Well, we are opposed to the plan.
I barely recognise. Do you know what a glow-up means?
Yeah, I do. It's good to get out and about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, what he would prefer, that the role of the media is to say, everything is awesome, there's not a problem, every solution's incredible, P.S. can we help organise your Bucks weekend? The reality is that there are, yes, those of us that didn't vote for him. Those of us who don't think that he is the second coming, and those of us who also can see that sometimes the emperor doesn't have any clothes. And as unpleasant as that is to mentally think about, the reality is, just like most of the media was oh so critical and oh so personal last time, there are plenty of us who just want to use the same standards on this bloke. We continue. Albanese said that he considered long-form pieces in the newspapers as being far less frequent, and newspaper front pages tended to be gone tomorrow because there isn't any substance to it. Well, I hope that he read what Peter Credlin wrote today in the weekend newspapers, because it was all about how the Prime Minister no longer deserves the benefit of the doubt. He is the emperor with no clothes, as Peter writes. Sadly, we now see Albo for what he is: weak, not across the detail, greedy for the trappings of the job despite the suit, still the raging hard left activist from his youth. All the stuff that we told you before the last election and we've been telling you every day since. And yes, we were mocked for doing so, but guess what? You could tell that this bloke was not going to be able to match up to the hype. But most of the media, of course, well, they go with the hype. I told you last week about a great editorial that Chris Kenny did on this very subject here on our airwaves. He wrote a more detailed version, even in the Australian newspaper, which is, what is the point of the Spectator Prime Minister? Anthony Albanese is shrinking before our eyes like an empty Twisties packet on a heater. Failing by his own criteria, running from his responsibilities, he's a diminished Prime Minister, unable or unwilling to exert whatever authority he can muster. And perhaps one thing that the Prime Minister needs to remember before he wants to blame the media who disagree with him as the reason why he is not having the greatest run. The reality of this bloke is that he was not elected by the majority of Australians. The Labor Party at the last election got one of the lowest votes it has got in decades. Just 32 and a bit % of Australians actually voted for the Labor Party. Now, yes, preferences from the Greens and all the rest of it means they got to the place where they won 2 more seats than they needed to form a majority. But that is the reality of the electoral politics. The vast majority of people didn't vote for him. So surprise, surprise, if the vast majority of people from time to time may actually notice that he isn't that amazing. But of course, rather than focus on the failings of the government, holding the government to account for its own failings, we know where most of the media is that likes the new arrangement of a Prime Minister who helps tuck them into bed at night by giving them interviews or sending them text messages about what's going to be happening tomorrow. Get Dutton. Let's pretend that Peter Dutton is the single biggest problem in Australian politics, that he's mini Trump, that he will divide us, that he will not respect the democracy, all the other crap that's been sent around for a while. Remember, this is a Prime Minister who's using taxpayers' money to do Labor Party work. And I'm not just talking about $100 or something million worth of taxpayer advertising, flogging programs that you don't need to apply for. I'm talking about things like taxpayers paying for a dirt unit to be set up inside the Prime Minister's office to try and find things to get people to be scared about even having a conversation about Peter Dutton. But then every now and then, like all good lefties, the Prime Minister can't help us but show his Achilles heel. From time to time, he will lead with his chin, and he doesn't realise that, of course, his jaw is glass. He's trying to pretend that the reason Peter Dutton will not get enough support to get anywhere near the Prime Ministership at the next election, meaning he can continue, that being Albo, to be exactly what he is and continue to fail because the other guys will never get over the teals, is that he's already trying to pretend that the next election is the last election. Same speech in between all of the other self-loathing and the podcast from the university. Essentially, Peter Dutton is Scott Morrison 2.0. Everything that you felt about ScoMo, everything you felt about that Liberal Party, you must automatically click and drag across to Peter Dutton because, of course, he was part of it. Now, I have a little warning for the Prime Minister and his political mates whose job, it seems at times, is to hate watch this show to know how normal people are thinking. In 2019, the then Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, absolutely nailed the Labor Party. Remember the miracle victory that we all knew was on its way because we knew people weren't going to buy Bill Shorten and the policies. Well, by his own admission, one of the things, of course, that when you've won an election nobody expects you to do is to basically try to rerun the same logic at the next election. And how did that work out for them? It is always dangerous, it is always stupid when people think that the last election was the forever election and we just do the same thing again 3 years later. Now, yes, it's a first-term government. The likelihood is that they will end up in a minority government where idiots like the Greens and the Teals will end up with even more power. But the reality of voting in Australia right now is the Prime Minister is only just, and I mean just, in front when it comes to news poll, but he's behind on lots of other polls. The issues say that Australians don't trust what happened out of the budget, and I think also we've all had enough of the gaslighting. We've had enough of the BS. We've had enough of being told that everything is awesome when it's harder than ever. Now, I also want to talk about something, which is be careful what you wish for. Be careful if you want to ban things and then the banning of things ends up being something completely different than what you were expecting. Now, the Prime Minister and the Communications Minister, Michelle Rowland, of course, they have formed because they right now are trying to censor the internet. They are trying to censor the internet by trying to essentially make it illegal for anyone to post, what is it they call?
Misinformation.
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 The misinformation which is there.
Some misinformation.
But of course, the reality is that misinformation is judged by the people in power. The people in power told you one thing during COVID. It turned out to be exactly the opposite. We show you the data here each and every night so you could see where the opinion comes from. Yet the opinion is what they want to ban. So if you post things like the comments I make each and every night, well, you know what will happen. Some lefty think tank will say, that's misinformation because he didn't carry the one. Well, what ends up then happening, of course, is they turn around and eventually they just hound the social media companies until no longer will you be able to post things from the websites or the news services that the government doesn't like. Now, of course, that all is great for lefties now because they think it's all about the people they don't like. Well, imagine if it's another government and it's the media they like. Another perfect example is in and around hate speech legislation. Now, like everyone, I was disgusted by the stuff that we saw outside of the Opera House in the days immediately after what had happened in Israel and so many people who'd been, of course, so viciously attacked and so many murdered. You also remember people who claimed to be pro-Palestine, but really these people were pro-Hamas. And the chant that even after they were able to send it off to the Third Umpire still wasn't a compliment about the Jews. Where's that Jews? 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 Well, the plan is for new pieces of legislation to be brought in to deal with hate speech, to, yes, hopefully be able to criminalise things like where's the Jews. But guess who's writing that legislation? Mark Dreyfus, a bloke who's previously wanted the Australian Federal Police to investigate his political opponents. And while under the cover of we're going after the people who've said some horrific things about the Jewish community, let's actually have a look at what this bill might really be about. Attorney General Mark Dreyfus is drafting new hate speech legislation that will impose criminal penalties for serious instances of vilification based on race, sexuality, gender, disability or religion. Now, there's already laws in that place, but the Albanese government is committed to promoting and supporting respect, acceptance and understanding across the Australian community. Labor has consulted widely on its hate speech bill, including with women's groups, disability advocates, ethnic communities, the LGBTQ advocates and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. So if you think hate speech legislation is all about the people saying, where's the Jews? It's going to be used as the Trojan horse to try to criminalise all sorts of behaviours that previously, while unpleasant, have not had criminal penalties attached. That's what took place in Victoria. Now, I'm not saying I want the right to abuse any of these people. Nobody should have that right. But be careful if it is the far left talking to the even further far left to write up the rules to decide what will now be criminal and not criminal in our community. Watch this space. Now, one more quick thing before we go here, and I'm going to get to some fun at the Elvis Museum in a second here. But Stephen Miles. Now, we know Stephen Miles is in for a buzzsaw at the upcoming Queensland election. Why? Polls couldn't be worse for this bloke. Now, he, of course, has previously turned around and tried to buy the votes of Queenslanders by saying you can have $1,000 off your power bills. Well, today, in a pilot program that will start in August and go all the way for 6 months, and funnily enough, through the Queensland election, the entire transport system will only need 50 cents from each person who wants to ride on it. Now, of course, the good people of Queensland, I love you. If I could have the blood transfusions to be a Queenslander, I would. But do not get bought off by this bloke. Don't forget the problems of his government. How many people have literally died in the back of an ambulance waiting to get into a hospital because of the way the Queensland government run them? Just last week, there was the story of a bloke in his 70s on the Gold Coast. Remember the mum in Brisbane who died waiting for an ambulance. Remember, 45% of all ambulances end up having to sit at a hospital because there's no one in the hospital. There's no beds for you to go into. Remember the problems when it comes to youth crime that Labor MPs say is a media beater. That's the reality of this bloke. I said it about Palaszczuk, I'll say it again here about Miles. Get the domestos, flush and get rid of the stain. They are a horrific government that deserves to go and go right now. All right, that's the news. Let's get to the fun that is beautiful parks, where, of course, the Elvis Festival happens here each and every year, and they have a museum filled with some of the best Elvis memorabilia I've ever seen, and I've been to Graceland. Well, g'day, Bob. Show us around this incredible place.
Sure. This is the Elvis Museum at the Parks Visitor Centre.
Yep.
And it's put together by Greg Page, who was the former Yellow Wig.
Of course.
And it's his collection, and it's all authentic stuff. I like some of the clothes that Elvis wore, and these are some of his movie clothes, and they're ones that he actually wore in the movies. Elvis actually used to recline on that couch.
That's it. The king has laid here.
He certainly has.
I've been lucky enough to go to Graceland, and one of the things that just blew my mind was they've got all of the designs of his costumes, right, everywhere. You don't have to go to Graceland because you can come and see it in parks. Style. Just style it and profile him, baby. It didn't matter whether he was poor or thin, he looked $1 million. And the stuff probably cost it too. Oh, well, thank you so much. What an incredible experience. And sadly, we end in 1977 as the great man did. But Elvis, always alive in our hearts, and alive here every January, right?
Ah, yes, it certainly is. It's a great place to be in. Come to Parks for January.
Bob, and how good is Parks having my Elvis microphone, by the way. Well done, Keithy. Well done, our audio man. Bob's wife Anne is here, and thank you very much for having us yesterday. I really appreciate it.
It was our pleasure, Paul.
So tell me, how did Elvis and Parks start? How did this all come together?
Well, I just happened to be an Elvis fan since I was 11 years old.
Excellent.
And Bob learnt. He said he's very smart. And we bought a building in Parks that was a student hostel and decided to turn it into a restaurant. We'd just come back from America. We'd taken our kids over to Disneyland. And so we thought, I was doing catering in the clubs for our local car club. And so the kids were all getting married and this sort of thing. So I thought, wonder if you could do things in that building. And Bob had worked on it as an apprentice. So when I went home, I spoke to him, and he had the keys and the plans the next morning. And so it took us a little while to be able to purchase it. They put it out for tender, didn't accept anybody. Then a little later it went out for tender, so we got it and decided to turn it into a restaurant. And the first thing we did was take down Parks and District Student Hostel. And so we had no name. And we were going to pick up some supplies, the vanities and things, I think, for the toilets. And Bob said, isn't it a pity we never got to Graceland when we went to America? And I, yeah, it is a shame. And he said, how would that be for a name? Better than Bob and Anne's.
So how does it grow to the festival, though? What did you do? Did you get a bunch of impersonators in? How did it work?
Well, that was in 1980 we bought it. And in 1992, we had been doing for quite a few years a party at the end of June for the family of the local editor of paper, for Rule. And his family were all Elvis crazy.
Who isn't?
Well, that's exactly right.
I love it.
Even the little kids all knew the words to all the Elvis songs. And they used to party and dance all night. And then after a couple of years of this, everybody had gone home and Bob and Rule were having a glass of red wine. And I was ready to go home, so I came up with my cup of tea and said, let's go home. And Bob said, Rule thinks we should have an Elvis week. Oh, OK. So we sat down and had a bit of a discussion about it. And they said, we thought we'd do it in August. It's now the end of June. I said, no, we can't do anything in 6 weeks. And why don't we go January for his birthday?
Great idea.
And they said, great. So Rule was very good with his paper for our local people, and somehow a little tiny bit got put in the NRMA magazine.
Yeah, the
and
Open
that got
Road.
us a few out of town, 2 little lines.
Yeah.
And so it all started from there.
And it's just, I mean, to the extent now where public art on the building is Elvis. I mean, I've been very lucky, very blessed to actually go to Graceland. I'm not joking. There is more public recognition in the streets of Parks than there are actually in Memphis, because Memphis is a town famous for a whole lot of other things, and they, you know, the blues over here and this record's there and that record's there. But to see on the side of a coffee shop, to see on the side of a pub, to see everyone embrace it, because this thing surges in January, 3 times the average population, which is normally about 12,000.
Yes.
So do they...
The 25,000 we get in, plus our... And that's only, I don't know...
Where do they sleep?
How they... Well...
Or do people just bill it an Elvis in their house?
They
you
do.
all have to get Elvis to sleep beside you one night or something.
Yes, something like that.
You don't know you volunteered, your next door neighbour. Oh, OK, there he is. He's just popping up anywhere. That's Parks. Elvis is just around the corner.
It goes everywhere, Forbes, Condo, Cowra,
Yeah,
Orange, Dubbo, and those towns bus their people over.
Yeah.
So they then get them to do their touristy things.
Well, I think it's beautiful what you and Bob have done for Parks, the idea that's just grown into this iconic thing. And believe it or not, I think the XPT tickets go on sale in and around this time of the year.
They've gone on sale.
Already sold out, probably.
I don't know about
All right,
that.
we'll double check. All right, thank you very much for the chat, and thank you for everything you do when it comes to Elvis.
Thank you.
Good on you. Thank you, darling. Do appreciate it, and stay there because I'm going to go off to a break, and straight after that, plenty more to celebrate about this region and also what young female basketballers will love about this part of Australia. Back at the Railway Hotel, having a good time. Parks, lovely to see you, lovely to be here. Now, of course, the only reason we are able to do Our Town all over the country, and it is my favourite part of the job, it's our favourite shows each and every month, is because of the support of Harvey Norman. We don't hide it. They're great sponsors and partners. And also, they are relentless in getting the message out about regional Australia and particularly regional Australian sport and the access that girls turning into young women have to a full career in sport from places like Parks. A perfect example of that is that there is now a pathway from the basketball courts of this part of Australia all the way to the bright lights of the WNBL. We all know how important sport is in regions like this. And we also want to make sure that the next generation of these regional athletes are able to get the support they need to make it to the elite levels of the sports that they love. That's why our mates at Harvey Norman have launched Future Flames, a pathway program with the Sydney Flames for junior female basketballers in New South Wales. They'll get elite level coaching at state-of-the-art training facilities that they would normally never get access to. I spoke to Victoria Denholm and Renee Garlop, 2 inspirational leaders of Future Flames, about this incredible program.
The genesis of Future Flames really came out of a conversation with Harvey Norman. They're really supportive and I'm really excited about this program.
A lot of girls playing basketball and the state teams have had a lot of success over the recent years, and then a lot of the girls will go to college and then some choose to stay, and it's what do you do next?
Creating a pathway to the Flames for local talent is really important.
Once they finish under 18s, there's the under 20s program, but that's a short kind of training stint till they go to their nationals. But we now have the opportunity to provide a program with 12 months of the year to help assist the talent in New South Wales and for them to continue developing.
And the players who currently are on the Sydney Flames, they know how important this is going to be for the next generation of women who want to fill their sneakers.
A few years ago, like before I went to college, there was a Flames Academy, and it was just really good for our confidence to be able to, communicate with professional players and see what the professional world is kind of like.
Bringing more people in and more players in, it will build like the WNBL and take it to that next level.
For junior athletes of New South Wales to be able to get this opportunity is really cool for them to kind of bridge the gap between their junior years and into their professional development.
Indiana Patullo is a young basketballer right here in Parkes who can't wait to take her game to the next level. She's exactly the kind of athlete that the Future Flames program is all about.
I really love it because I can make new friends.
Her coach, Rem Henry, has been working with PCYC in New South Wales, a charity delivering basketball activities for everyone from primary to high school all the way up to adults.
I mean, there's plenty of kids that love it. The numbers that we got, especially at the start, and have maintained those numbers during the course of this year especially.
He has seen basketball take off for young female athletes in particular in this region.
It's immensely important because if there's no programs like this, then it doesn't happen. So there's a lot of talent out in the bush, and a lot of it gets missed because of the location and the access to the resourcing. So for these girls to know that they can go down a pathway following the footsteps of the ladies that they might see on the TV, on the WNBL, you might have the next Lauren Jackson, Michelle Timms.
And he knows what this will do to help future athletes. Australia loves its sport, and our partners, Harvey Norman, are doing everything they can to make sure that our most talented kids get all the help they need to live their dreams. We love them, they're great people, and all the best to all of the young basketballers around the area. Hey, I want to give a very specific shout out. Whack this up on the screen right now, because this is how you can apply to be part of the program. All right, now I'll put it up on the social so it's nice and easy, but basically just go looking for the Sydney Flames as part of the WNBL websites. But as you can see right there, where it is basketball/Sydney Flames. WNBL.basketball/Sydney Flames. And then you'll get all of the information there. Now, round of applause, former Deputy Prime Minister, brought his Elvis glasses, Michael McCormack. Oh, hello, Hunker. How are you, man? How are you?
Thank you very much.
Oh, look at him. He's in the building. Of course, member for Riverina. You love this area.
What's not to love about it?
Correct.
I mean, look at the audience. They're fantastic.
Oh, good. Look at that. That's a politician who's saying, I love you. So we were just talking a couple of seconds ago that Parkes becomes a real, it's not a microcosm because it's obviously quite large, all of the areas, but for all of the stuff that actually holds the economy up, right?
Agriculture, the Elvis Festival, how good are the steels?
So good.
The dish. I mean, people should go to the dish. They should come down the Newell Highway and visit the dish. And at the moment, they are helping out at the dish those little wonderful rovers on the planet Mars. And they're going to bring soil samples back. But it's science, it's entertainment, it's agriculture, it's mining. This is a microcosm of the best of Australia.
I was walking around this weekend and you have a chat to people, and always, local government's a lot closer than anything's going to happen in Canberra. How do you make sure that, obviously it's easy when you're the Deputy Prime Minister, but when you're trying to argue from the other side, how do you make sure that people aren't forgotten, that it's not just about human beings equals infrastructure, that it's about people who are hurting on cost of living, people who need all sorts of support that anyone in the city does?
Well, you still turn up. You turn up to the Deb Bulls, you turn up to the Fates, you turn up to the sport. The Spacemen won today. They beat Ningen in the Peter McDonald Premiership. But you turn up to those events and you listen. You don't talk at them, you listen. And then when you go back to Canberra, as I will tomorrow for Tuesday sittings, you then get up and you speak up passionately and proudly and loudly about all the things you hear.
Collectively, it feels like, and again, I'm very opinionated at the start. I don't want to be particularly party political now, but just as an idea, when regional Australia is trying to pull as one to remind the people who are setting policy, who may live in places that don't even see the rest of their own capital city, let alone come and see the rest of their country? How do you speak to bureaucrats who may not leave Canberra? How do you get people to...
Well, you've raised a great question, and the difficulty is I think too many of the ministers these days are listening to the bureaucrats and letting them have all the say. None of those bureaucrats will ever have their name on a ballot paper, and certainly none of those bureaucrats, or very few of them, ever get beyond the bubble that is Canberra, and that's the problem. It's a problem when it comes to regional grant funding. It's a problem when it comes to the in-tray of a minister, and ministers should be able to call their bureaucrats, call their secretaries in and say a very powerful word sometimes, and that is no.
Yeah.
No. Or explain to me why that should be so. And that is one of the difficulties. And I really worry about the National Anti-Corruption Commission then calling a minister and saying, you went against that bureaucrat. Why did you do that?
Yeah,
that must be corrupt.
Yes.
You must be corrupt, therefore. They leak it out to the press, and of course, once your name is smeared,
you're gone.
You're gone. And it's not right. You shouldn't be throwing mud. And certainly the ministers should occasionally actually just say no, because the bureaucrats aren't running the show. They shouldn't be.
Well, this is part of the exchange as to why we vote. We vote for the people who represent us to sit on top of.
The House of Representatives is a people's house. It is a people's, or it should be.
Yeah.
It always was.
Well, will it always be? We'll find out together. But give me what does Parks need? What's the sort of stuff that you need to fight for that the region needs?
Well, we're getting a bypass, and that is great. That intermodal hub, this is the centre of the inland rail. This is where the east-west, north-south rail intersectors cross. It is a perfect place to grow. This could be anything, this city, and we need growth, and we need people to come here, to visit here, to tell others this is a great place. At the moment, we need an aged care centre. We've had one of our aged care centres be announced that it's going to close its doors, and that is a huge worry for these people. 46 people are now no longer know where their future is. I'm sure the Mayor, Neil Westcott, will have more to say about that, but that is a huge concern. But this is a great place to raise a family, great place to do the best thing for Australia, and that is either mine, grow good food and fibre, and just to be your best self. And you can do it in Parks. It's got a can-do council. Unlike some other councils, this is a can-do, proactive council. Everybody pulls together the same way. They might have all the same politics, but they do it for what's best in the interest of Parks.
See, it's always 50-50 when we come and do in our town, where people love, oh, great, you're going to celebrate, but you're going to tell people and they're going to start moving here. So you ready for a couple of extra neighbours? You're all right with that? Somewhere? Well, OK, what if they dress as Elvis? What if they dress as Elvis? I always like it. Michael, thank you very much. Enjoy going back to Canberra. I'm sure it's thrilling all day, every day to be sitting in that chamber.
I enjoyed the drive here because I knew what was coming. I'm not necessarily going to enjoy the drive to Canberra tomorrow, but indeed, come to Parks. That is my message to people. Visit in January and come to the Elvis Festival.
He's a good man. Give it up for him. Michael McCormick, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. All right, quick break. Back with more here on Paul Murray Live. Hotel here in Parks. The local mayor is none other than Neil Westcott, and he joins us now. Neil, lovely to see you.
Hello, Paul. Thank you.
Now, we were also going to say, for all the Elvis talk, you know, you're responsible for the whole region. There's a bit of ABBA love here too, as well.
There is a bit of ABBA love, 50 years since Eurovision, Paul, and Trundle is putting on the ABBA Festival in October, and we can't wait.
So do you put on the fake beard, or do you dress like the blonde Sheila or the... When you dress up, what do you dress up as?
Oh, yeah, look, I probably won't go with the beard, but I will have plenty of lycra, plenty of shine.
Bit of Bjorn, bit of Benny somewhere?
Bit of spangle in there.
Oh, lovely.
Carry the guitar. Yeah.
Oh, now, of course, the dish, the CSIRO facility that we all know has connections back to the first landing on the moon, through to what Michael was saying before about literally connections with what's happening in and around rovers on Mars. It is a phenomenal facility, and there's a lot of people who may well remember a school excursion. Bugger that. Come back with your kids, your grandkids, because it's something that keeps this town absolutely on the map for people when they're working out where to go on the winter or the summer holiday, right?
Absolutely. Whilst Elvis is obviously an iconic thing these days, and thank you to Anne and Bob for starting it off for us, but the telescope, since 1961, I attended in the pram.
Oh, really?
I was in the pram. But since 1961 has just been the icon of Parks and surrounds. And I just think the way that they've managed to keep a facility that was probably never meant to be there more than 20 years, open and upgraded to right up to the Artemis project that it's currently working on. Fabulous, and it's a great facility, and yes, come visit.
Yeah, it is amazing. So let's talk about parks, the region as such. What's the stuff that makes you proud? And I don't just mean the people, but about what this area achieves, how it punches above its weight. What's the stuff that's easy to talk up when you go to Sydney and talk to the Premier or something like that?
Well, first it's the people.
God love you. Betty. The pollies know how it works, don't they? All right, keep going.
Election in September, guys.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, don't forget. At least he's honest about it.
It's the people. But, look, I think we represent... It's very easy for a mayor to come up and say, we are the best place in the world. Truthfully, we represent a lot of mid-sized regional towns who are all doing our darndest to create a critical mass that we can stand on our own. That's all we ask.
Yeah.
We want to be ourselves. And Parks is fortunate, and we have a few cards up our sleeve with things like the Special Activation Precinct and Inland Rail. And as Michael mentioned, I must say, Michael, thank you for being such a wonderful member for us for so many years.
Good man, he is.
But our place on the planet is actually given us a great opportunity to grow, but our earnest desire then is to have the services to match. So I do spend an enormous amount of time as working within local government, trying to actually solve issues that are not really our remit.
Well, so it's that thing, right? So the people watching us all over the country, people who either might be looking for the lifestyle change or maybe just this new moment, right? You need doctors. You need all sorts of things. Literally, if somebody wanted to bring their skills here, can I say just call the council, call the mayor and see what happens?
Which camera do I look in?
Yeah. All right, down the barrel. Here he is. Do the sales pitch.
If you are a doctor, if you are in obstetrics, if you are in anaesthetics, if you want to come to a town that will love you beyond measure, Parks is your place.
Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I very, very much appreciate it. Thank you for having us. The people are great. And a bloke who, as you said before, 5 generations connected to the place. You want nothing more for it to be its best self, and you're a great example of the type of mayor who represents a place that's kicking ass. Well done, mate.
And thank you once again for coming to Parks, Paul, and your wonderful entourage.
Oh, how good are they?
And
they are very good. The pubs of this place are particularly happy. Now, there's lots of other things to do when you're here, all sorts of fun to see, be it whether it flies or whether it drives, you can see it here. Just on the edge of Parks Airport, hang on. There's something that we never do at our towns, but I actually want to do it right now. Listen to this. How good is that? Anyway, back to the story. So, Parks Airport, on the side of it, is a treasure trove of Australian aviation history. The man who's going to show us all through here right now, none other than Cole. Cole, lovely to meet you, mate.
You too.
There's some cool stuff in here.
Yes, it is very cool.
Oh, wow. Well, let's start here. Navy helicopter. Tell me the story.
WETX 813. This used to be on the HAMS Melbourne.
There's no other way of putting it. That's a killing machine.
Yes, exactly. If you look at the front, you've got a Gatling gun on there, and there's your cannon, and then you have your missiles hanging under the wing.
Blimey. Fantastic. Oh. Wow, that's on TV, isn't it? For adults. Still a button I shouldn't push here, Cole?
A checklist which they must go through before this.
All right, let's keep looking. Wow. That is massive. Wow.
PC Orion.
Now, while I'm here, I'm about to attempt a major feat in aviation. It is a perilous journey, one that the current President of the United States cannot make, and that is to walk up the stairs without falling over. Wish me luck. Oh, wow. See? Joe, I know how hard this is, but 4 more years, right? And now that I'm here, I am not a crook. Oh, now we're in my favourite place. I love old cars. Barry, lovely to meet you, lovely to see you. Tell me about this bit of work.
This is a 1909 Nag, very early German car. It's spent all its life in parks. The story goes that at one stage, one of the daughters went for a drive to Allentown 15k away, and the other one went in a horse and cart, and won the horse and cart beat her.
Look at this baby, the Chrysler, obviously.
Chrysler, yes. This is, again, been in parks all its life. Businessman from Parks was on an overseas trip, and he picked this up from the Chrysler factory in Chicago.
Of course, Australians always love their utes. Yep. Can we have a look at this Plymouth here?
Plymouth.
This was the, no, I'm not going to say bottom of the line, but this was the everyman car, right?
Yeah, that's right, yep.
Look at that now. I mean, look at the styling, the shape. How much would that have cost, do you think? Just have a guess.
In the 1950s, that would have cost about £1,000.
Oh, can I get in a time machine, please? I'd just go back and buy all it. £1,000 for this.
This, of course, is when a Holden cost $900.
Oh, I'd buy every one of them. Every one of them. Thank you very much to everyone at the lovely museums. You're going to see that, the dish, eating a whole bunch of stuff. All right, after the break, it's time to meet the king. Elvis on Sky News next. Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis Aaron Presley! Hello! Otherwise known as Alan. Alan, Elvis, lovely to see you, man.
And thank you, Paul.
You look $1 million.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, dare I say.
Oh, thank you very much.
Now, when does one... When did you start loving Elvis? How did you decide?
Mate, when I was a young guy, I was like anyone else, like Elvis, Neil Diamond. There was a lot of good musicians out there at the time, but Elvis had a stigma about him at that stage.
This is amazing, right?
It is, like where everyone grew up in the 50s, 60s and 70s, and he was the king, so what else do you do?
But what I like here is you're settling in on my favourite Elvis, right? Like I like late 60s, early 70s Vegas Elvis, right? There's just something about that swagger, something about the rhinestones. Did you buy it? Did you make it? Where do you get something like this, and does it come in 5XL?
Well, lucky it's nearly lycra.
Yeah, it'll stretch right out like that.
So, no, we get it from overseas. Depends on what sort of suits you want, because Elvis had such a vast variety of suits. You know, there's probably nearly 40 of them. And depends what era, like you said before, or how you want to present yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what you do.
All right, I want to learn some moves, okay? Now firstly, right, I'm going to step out for 1 second. I want you to show me your best Elvis pose, your best Elvis right down the barrel, okay? So here we go. This is what it looks like to be Elvis. Take it away, Alan. Oh, yeah! All right. All right. Teach me, Alan. Teach me. Wax on, wax off. I've got the crane ready. Let's go.
Okay, for me and your stature, you've got to get the flexi hips going.
Okay.
Okay, let's get the leg out there like this. Okay, the main thing is to get, because Elvis used to do all those moves on stage.
Of course.
So you get yourself out there like that.
Oh,
bring it back, swing it around.
Oh, baby, my legs are swinging. My legs are swinging.
And then kick it in.
I don't know, what with the other leg? I'm too uncoordinated. All I can do is this. And then give me the hands. Give me the hands, baby. Oh, yeah. Elvis Aaron Presley, love me. Woo! We're out of the building. Thank you, Parks. We love you. Give me a hug, Elvis. I love you, man. See you next time. Paul Murray Live. Ta-da.